Thank you very much for that kind introduction. I'm here to talk today about the other half. Dr. Susan did a great job of providing an intro to some of the issues I'm going to address. But basically, the challenge we have going forward, if the index works on this slide thing, is, first of all, we have to face the same challenge we always have faced, which Susan did an excellent job of describing and framing in terms of economics and things of that nature. And let's face it, infrastructure decisions are cast in concrete, literally, often, not figuratively. So they're hard to change, and they're even harder to update. And of course, there's a scale issue. When you talk about infrastructure, that is a discussion of scale. And conservation, conservatism, which is a flip side of what was just described, these things are really expensive. So very little stomach for brand new innovation at the scale of billions of dollars. So we're stuck with a conservative situation. But in the US, of course, we have one other challenge. And by the way, conservatism, of course, is always backward-looking, not forward-looking. But in the US, safety infrastructure design has always had to account for the world's worst drivers. So this problem has faced our infrastructures, and I'm distinguishing US drivers from Canadian drivers who are not nearly as bad. So these have been all the traditional challenges that infrastructure designers have faced forever. However, there's a new infrastructure challenges that are a result of the new autonomous vehicles. First of all, vehicles, there's really two types of innovation that's creeping into the fleet in a virtually unregulated manner. There's driver assist systems and autonomous vehicles. And they're being deployed in the current vehicle fleet in incredible scales. And the current automated driver assistance system demonstrably make the world's worst drivers worse. And the current EV technologies are worse than the world's worst drivers. So the continued deployment of these technologies, unless we get our act together, is only going to increase the crash rate. So absence of federal motor vehicle standards, applying standards to any of these technologies is just compounding the problem enormously. And of course, it leaves the infrastructure designers totally at a loss. What are you designing the infrastructure for? If the vehicles themselves don't have to demonstrate any particular performance or technology. Now, of course, cars are a tremendous achievement. This is put out by the National Academies. The automobile was the #2 most impactful innovation of the 20th century. But not without cost. Of course, the annual fatalities that have been related to the use, the introduction of this technology, these tremendous blessings have come with a tremendous cost. And it's difficult to appreciate the scale until you start adding it all up and do the integral under that curve. And then compare the cost of automotive fatalities to even our wars. I would argue the people in this room are doing more for the health and safety of any of their publics than the Defense Department, because the scale of the casualties involved is so much greater. Now, across the world, things, of course, are not equal. And this is my lead into why does the U.S. have the worst drivers in the world? Well, the data shows we have the worst drivers in the world, and it is not close. It is not close. By the way, you can find this graph in Wikipedia. You see on the left there, I had to correct the axis. They got all the data right, but they mislabeled the axis. So the chart in Wikipedia is wrong. It's actually 1 per 100,000. Now, of course, there's a few countries missing. Like, where's 18% of the world's population on this chart? Well, I thought I would add it for you. But like everything else in China, it's complicated. First of all, there's the official estimate. And if you look at the official estimate, the number is 60,000 automotive fatalities a year in China. Puts it right in far from here. But until 2019, there was this fly-by-night operation called the World Health Organization that used to do their own independent estimate of the number of automotive fatalities in the United States. And they put the number at 250,000 as of 2019. Now, I have given speeches on automotive autonomous vehicle safety in China as an invited lecturer, and I sat there for other Chinese speakers, and they all used the 250,000 number. Even the, I've been to China 100 times. I guarantee you, many, many times the official Chinese government publications use the 250,000. But Xi has put a stop to that. So now, the World Health Organization has been pressured not to make independent estimates of the Chinese national automotive death rate. But if you look at the Chinese number and our number, China and the US are on the same boat. We've got a fatality rate on it that's way out of line with the rest of the world. Now, of course, that begs the question, do we really have the world's worst drivers? Well, we don't know. The Chinese did it, but we got amongst the world's worst drivers. So, now, of course, the first fundamental question is, why are we so bad? And I don't know that the Chinese problem has the same source as the US problem, but the source of the US problem is pretty clear. First of all, our National Highway Traffic Safety Administration has been totally vehicle focused. And that's because it was created in response to this novel novel back in before many of you were born, called Unsafe at Any Speed, which convinced the public that cars weren't safe. Well, unfortunately, the driver is makes far more impact on accidents than the car ever did in terms of its importance to safety. But the real problem is our permissible of allowable limit of alcohol is 0.08 is a disgrace, a national disgrace. Research by the automotive doctors, the AMA, everybody else, everything above 0.05 is impaired driving. You could take people, this is not junk science, you could take people off the track, they start hitting cones. This is about 0.05, and we let people drive to 0.08. So you wonder why we have the worst drivers in the world? We come by it honestly. And you might remember in that previous graph why Russia was way up above us, and then it came down below us. Totally getting their alcoholism under control. I mean, Russia used to have an alcohol abuse problem. They still do in the public, but on the roads, they finally got it down. So they're now doing better. This is Russia doing better than us? So, and you look at 0.05%, that's the rule, all over the world. What in the hell is wrong with us? But anyway, you see the numbers. So we come by the worst drivers in the world, honestly. So what is the NHTSA have been responding? Do we pass better laws about alcohol? No! Instead, we're going to make the cars drive themselves, and it won't matter if there's drunks inside. So, NHTSA has done a lot of study and said, yeah, 94% of auto accidents are caused by people. They're the problem. We got to get those people out of driving cars. And in fact, the Secretary of the U.S. Transportation has said, we're going to get people out of stop driving cars. This is going to be the biggest safety impact, like since sliced bread. But it has such impact because we're so far behind the rest of the world. If we were as good as the rest of the world, it wouldn't have quite this impact. But he then ends up paying. And of course, they issued a policy back in 2016. Damn it, we're going to go automated. So, self-driving and autonomous vehicles is a somewhat complicated topic, and I don't expect all of the audience to understand the different models. But basically, this taxonomy was established in 2014 by the U.S. Society of Automotive Engineers. Everybody in the world uses it now. Our government adopted the Society of Automotive Engineers system. And basically, it's there's standards and there are SAE standards, and they all have the same classification system. There are 5 levels, actually 6. 1 you don't have any. But you can see all the way up from, I don't know if you can read all the text, but basically the big distinction is how do I go back? That's what I just tried.
On the bottom here.
No, there we go.
You can click on that.
Okay, give me that one again.
Right, that there.
Oh, that's all right. That's that one. You're going wrong. Hold on. I want that one. please with them. But basically the big distinction, anyway, the big distinction is between 2 and 3. 1 and 2 are just modicum degrees that are called driver assist technologies. When you get to 3, you get to 3 to 4 are various degrees of autonomous vehicles. So driver assist is 2 to 0, autonomous vehicles are 3 to 5. Now, the poster child of driver assist systems is Tesla. I mean, they've made them, and by far and away the most successful, and they've made the most publicity about it, things of that nature. And it's funny, you listen to Elon Musk, and they're fully autonomous, right? But when his lawyers file, it's only level 2. Because they're supposed to be driver assist, and all sorts of legal reporting requirements kick in if you say you're level 3, particularly in California, and I'll visit that a little more later on. But you can't shut Musk up. So on the this is a screenshot from the Tesla website in October of 2016. They're full self-driving, no problem. What's the big deal? And of course, it's been enormously successful commercially. So this is the rate at which Tesla's have been. I wish this data had updated. This is a study that came out of MIT, but this is how the various systems are deployed through 2018. And they're up to hardware system 4 now. And if you look at the worldwide deployment, unfortunately I stole this graph so the writing isn't big, but you just need to know that it's 6 million in 2014. So this is not a trivial infrastructure challenge. There are 6 billion of these pups running around. So with drivers who think they have full autonomous capability. Now in terms of a date, actually Musk rolled out the autopilot in 2016, and some poor Chinese fellow actually believed him. So many of you have seen this video. This fellow had a dash cam in addition to his Tesla cameras, and he's driving along in China. Bam. Now, what I want you to do is watch this again. If I can succeed in doing that. No, I got to figure out how to get it back. I want to watch that video one more time. There we go. Now, keep your eye right on the stripe on the fender. I'm going to get out of the way. Watch that. Bam. Now, Tesla's response to this, oh, it wasn't on autopilot. Are you crazy? What driver can keep that line orientation on the fender, you know? And 2 years later, they finally said, oh, yeah, I guess it was on autopilot. But nevertheless, it was on autopilot. And you can see what it's doing. It's grabbing that road stripe and guiding on it. You guys are guiding Teslas. Has Tesla ever told you that?
Have you ever seen our pavement markings in Canada in the spring? There's nothing left after the snowplows. We do a good job snowplowing. All the snow and all the pavement markings are gone.
So these autonomous vehicles, these driver assist systems are taking clues off the stripe, and there's no standards. And we're deploying a fleet of millions of vehicles that are looking at infrastructure, and I'm talking to you people. What's wrong with this picture? Well, and then you wonder why. Now, okay, maybe this is a Chinese problem. No. Let's look, you might remember this crash. This was on 101 in 2018, right down here at the border point, right? Okay, so this poor Apple engineer is in his Tesla on cruise control, runs down the road, smash right into that. Tesla. Oh, it wasn't our So, a bunch of guys in a television station went out to with a Tesla the same day, and depending on how they went into the past, because the stripes have been restriped recently for a commuter lane, depending on how they came into the stripes, the Tesla would do the same thing. So their Tesla on the television show would head right for the gore point, just like this board does. So it isn't just a stripe, but when you restripe, and you don't take out the old stripes, What does the Teslas glom onto? Are they talking to you about that? What is the removal standard? So, outside of that, we haven't got any problems. So, I haven't got time, I'm running out of time here. So, but in 2021, Musk made an incredible decision. The more he thought about it, humans drive with just 2 eyes. Why should I have to put radar on my Teslas? It costs me money, expensive. If my engineers do it right, I should be able, all those Teslas should be doing autopilot with only cameras. And he disabled the radars even that were out there. And of course, you can see the subsequent headline down at, things started crashing right and left. Incredibly, you might have caught this headline in Forbes magazine about 6 months ago. Now, Tesla has the highest crash rate of any brand. Any brand. Incredibly, Tesla has managed to make the world's worst drivers even worse. That is no small achievement. So anyway, but there's no standards. Musk can wake up with a headache and decide to take the technology out of a car, put it in. Yet, look how this affects people's safety and lives. No federal standards. Every attempt to make a federal standard, total gridlock in Congress. Now, actually, this shouldn't surprise anybody, because in 2018, a researcher published a study. He went through the fatal accident reporting system data the hard way. Back then, Teslas weren't coded conveniently, but he teased out an analysis. And he told us, hey guys, those are uncertainty bands, but this ain't looking good for Teslas even back in 2018. But the feds are so wound up over the need to deploy these things to get those drunk drivers out of the cars that they're overlooking this continual stream of data, and they still haven't managed to pass any performance standards for the vehicles. And we don't want a prescriptive standard. We don't want them to say you have to have LiDAR. It's just a performance standard. You've got to be able to do X, avoid a vehicle at 100 yards, they got to be performance standards, but we don't have any. Now, of course, in response to all this miserable publicity, Tesla finally had to issue a recall. But they didn't fix any of this guidance stuff. All they had to fix was the notification to the driver that he was in the autopilot. So, you can be sure this is the formal language from the finding. You can be sure this scored nothing. I promise. So, even prior to this mess, even the feds figured out that we got a real problem with these driver-assisted vehicles. They are just crashing too often. So they issued this standing order. 2001, it took effect 9 July. It said, okay guys, all you automotive manufacturers across the entire United States got to report certain types of accidents. And basically, and this applied to autonomous vehicles and driver-assisted vehicles. You got to report if there's a hospitalized injury. You got to report if there's a vehicle tollway. You got to report it if there's airbag deployment, which means a fairly severe crash, and any collision with a bystander or pedestrian. Okay, you say. Fine. We're going to get some national data, and we're going to see some real performance numbers on these driver assist systems and these autonomous vehicles. Wrong. In the first year, they received 130 reports. 90 of those were from California. All we were doing is taking the OL 316 reports from California and posting them in the federal database. New York didn't have a single accident? Do you really believe that? Not one? 70 million people on the East Coast didn't have one accident? Yeah, so. But the thing is, what the real tragedy is this instrument just enforced damn regulation. A lot of data could come out of this that would be of value because, there it is. Look at the detail in terms of what's being hit. At least you can get some insight into things they're running into. And you could look at those portions that deal with infrastructure obstacles and what risk they're posing as at least a talking point. You could start a discussion between vehicle and infrastructure designers. But no, the regulation isn't being enforced, so. Now, what's the implication for infrastructure of all this? There are no requirements. So you don't know how wide the stripe has to be for a Tesla to find it reliable. You don't know how far you have to rub out a stripe. And this goes for every other vehicle too, the lane tracking, lane changing, things of that nature. Just no idea. There are no performance standards. They don't have to do anything well for, as far as that goes, not at all. Like I say, even the Tesla technology. NHTSA's effort at half-hearted, it's not enforced. I mean, clearly it's a joke. So, a manufacturer has total freedom now. Put in anything, and I guess it's left to the litigation and tort system to figure out who's at fault for what. And any effort to federally mandate in Congress any of these safety standards is completely stalled by the dysfunctional nature of Congress. Now, California was the first and still the only state that requires autonomous vehicle accidents to be reported on their OL 316 report. And every other state has been trying to lure this autonomous vehicle testing out of California by saying you don't have to report. It's called a race to the bottom. And there are now 30 states that permit A/B testing, 29 of which don't require any reporting. But this is research I did, published a while ago. These are the accident rates of all the autonomous vehicle manufacturers operating in California with an accident crash rate stated per mile over the 5 years indicated. I'll update this in 2024, because COVID sort of made 2021 and 2022 a little bit relevant, so I didn't bother. But anyway, as a benchmark, here's the human driver crash rate. Remember, this is the human crash rate of the worst drivers in the world. So the autonomous vehicle technology can't even do as well as the worst drivers in the world. So this is my take going forward, for what it's worth. Any progress? Everybody's got to be working to the same music here. We've got to have some standards to work with. The infrastructure designers have to know what the car's going to look at. The cars have to demonstrate a certain ability to look at the infrastructure with a certain degree of success. Remember that garbage truck in China? That truck wasn't moving. That wasn't a vehicle-to-vehicle collision. That was a Tesla plowing into the infrastructure. So, and of course, you saw the infrastructure in our go point. The infrastructure kills cars if they run into them at 70 miles an hour. You know, infrastructure is strong. So we've got to have some standards, and then this has got to do something. Designers of the infrastructure are going to have to, we're going to have to use and depend on what these manufacturers, these vehicles can do, and they aren't even talking. You're not even talking to them, and they're not talking to you, and they got all the money, so they got to come to you. They are not discussing what could be done to make the interface between cars and infrastructure a lot safer. And we're talking about business conferences about the update, the future of the infrastructure. Guys, this is the future. We have millions of these vehicles running around. So what's got to happen? First of all, they got to start telling you what the hell they're doing and why. We have to, standardize vehicle performance and infrastructure designers can expect. And finally, put these where I can read them. Obviously, if the cars are going to queue off shape, placement, color, etc. of the infrastructure, they've got to tell you. And then finally, we've got to start talking about the infrastructure actually actively communicating with a smart vehicle. Because all the discussion has been about the designers are completely preoccupied with smart cars talking to other smart cars. God, there's a lot of post pillars and bad things that you run into that aren't talking to anybody. Why? Because no one said they should. So in the future, we got to be thinking about design infrastructure that talks to our cars. Thank you.